Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us. Today, we'll spend around 30 minutes walking you through the process of design thinking, which, by the way, plays a huge role in our lives as UX designers. And after that, we'll spend the rest of the time answering live questions. My name is Nina, and I'm a UX designer on Google Pay.
And I'm Lou, and I'm also a UX designer here at Google Pay. I work very closely with Dina, and we're both super excited to be here today and to answer all of your live questions.
Yeah, so through this training, we'll walk you through how we work at Google. So it's not just about finding a solution, but it's about how we work, how we collaborate with people from different backgrounds, and how we work together to arrive at a solution.
So we're going to walk you through the design thinking process. This is a great process every designer uses at Google to come up with innovative solutions and great products. So let's begin.
Yeah. So what design thinking is really about? Whenever we think of crazy ideas, we go through this process to help us think creatively and collaboratively. And it really helps us arrive at, what's the next big thing we want to launch out to the world, whether it's a Google X type of thing or an everyday product like Gmail.
In our day-to-day life as designers, as UXers here at Google, we use design thinking a lot. But there are also incubators at Google that help different teams come up with new ideas and improve the existing products they're working on. For example, there's an incubator at Google called Area 120. This incubator is great because everyone that works in Google can go to the incubator and pitch an idea. And the people working in Area 120 will provide them with the design thinking framework in order for them to come up with a very concrete solution for that idea. Great products have come out of Area 120. Things such as a website for travelers to allow them to compare prices whenever they're going to different locations, or an experimental podcast app, and also an app that crowdsources information of the train system in New York City so that travelers have to spend less time waiting for trains. So today we want to walk you through all the stages of the design thinking process because we want you to be able to use this framework. So what you can see in the screen here is a little bit the step-by-step process of how design thinking works. There's 5 very distinctive steps. This process was created by the Stanford University and IDEO, which is a company that focuses in innovation. The first and most important phase is to empathize. In this phase, we're trying to understand who are our users and what do they want. In this phase, we observe, we engage, and we immerse in the context of our users. Then we have the define phase. Here, we try to frame a problem from a user point of view. With that problem, we go to the next stage, which is ideate. In this stage, it's all about getting crazy and trying to come up with as many solutions as we can for that problem. Then we go to prototype. In prototype, we get ideas out into the world. We try to build that solution as cheaply as we can so that then we can test it, which is the 5th step, with real users. In the test stage, we want to learn from users. And this is the key of design thinking. Design thinking is not about coming up with a great solution from day one. Design thinking is all about learning. We want to really understand our users. So we will walk through each of these steps in depth. But first, we want you to see this challenge. Reimagine your college experience. What would you change? This challenge is important because at the end of this presentation, we want you to come up with a solution for this challenge using the design thinking process. So let's dig in.
Yep. All right, well, let's start with the very first phase, and as Lou said, that's empathizing. And why is this one of the most important phases? It's because this is when we try to understand the user point of view. We try to see the world from their lens. And this idea about empathizing with the users has been our mantra at Google since the very first day, since day one. And our co-founder, Larry Page, still strongly believes in this idea even 20 years later. So, what's empathizing really about? I mean, okay, we can try to understand the user, but how do we use this in our design thinking process? Well, we try to come up with what we call user statements. And let me give you an example. Well, let's say Karen. Karen is our user, and she is a college student who needs to quickly sign up for classes because the classes she wants to fill, she wants that they fill up very fast. So she has a lot of stress and frustration around this. And this is just one of the many user statements you can think of. And using this format will really help you for the stages that come after this.
So, Nina, how many user statements should we build?
Well, frankly, as much as you can. Because with every new user statement, you understand a little piece of the puzzle and you understand the user a little bit better. And that's super important for everything that follows after. Yeah, so all right, what happens when you have a bunch of user statements? Well, after that, you'll try to form problems into the form of how might we's. What does this mean? A how might we is a statement that literally starts with the words how might we. Let's say, how might we make Karen's sign-up process less stressful? And this is one of the many how might we's you can come up with. And all of these are framed around helping you to come up with solutions later on. Yeah.
Okay, I have an idea for how might we.
Okay.
How might we make Karen's life better?
Well, that's a little bit too broad. So we try to keep it narrow enough that you can focus on a specific direction and not be way too broad, because this could have so many solutions that it's very hard to focus on finding on getting a direction, right? So you shouldn't go too broad.
Okay, I have a better one.
All right.
How might we make an app for Karen that feels let me rephrase it.
No.
How might
an app for Karen? That's already way too narrow. So you want to stay away from prescribing solutions in the how might we's. So you should keep it wide enough that there could be multiple solutions to the problem, but not too wide that you don't know where to start from. So yeah, starting with an app from Karen, that's probably the wrong way to go. So what happens after that? Let's say you have a lot of how might we's, and what do we do with that?
That's a great question. So we pick one of the how might we's that we want to focus on. So for instance, in this case, it could be how might we make current sign-up process less stressful? And we start ideating. This phase is my favorite phase. I really love it. Nina knows it. We work together all the time, and I am crazy about ideation because it's all about getting crazy. It's all about being creative. What we do is we try to come up with as many solutions as we can for this problem. And we really, at this point, only care about quantity, only care about really all the craziest ideas that we can come up with. So how do we do it? We take a stack of Post-its and a marker, and everyone in the room going through the design thinking process writes down as many ideas as they can about the process. And we always try to build on top of each other's ideas. That's why when I'm writing down an idea that I just had, I will call it out loud so that other people in the room can also hear that idea and build on top of that. For example, how can I make Karen's process of signing up less stressful? How if we make assigning class? What if we assign classes based on user grades? Okay, I would write it out and also call it out so that people in the room could build on top of that.
Maybe we could try assigning based on luck and not on grades. That would be interesting.
That's another idea. We're going to write it down as well. And what if we base it on luck, but we also have a lucky draw? So we have an event at the beginning of each semester so that we make sign up for classes not just less stressful, but also fun.
There you go.
There you go. So we write everything down. There's also another way of ideating, which is more individual, where we can take a big piece of paper, such as what you see here, and fold it in 3 pieces, so we have like 8 slots, no? And we have to write at least 8 ideas, one per slot. This really forces us to come up with new ideas that we haven't thought of. And the whole point of ideating is coming up with ideas that we would not think about automatically. If we only come up with one idea, then that's the most obvious idea. Everyone will think about that idea. We want to be a little bit more creative here. So we can think of things such as making sign up automatic for Karen, or as we said before, having a lucky draw, or even having a service, providing a service where someone else signs up on behalf of Karen.
So how many of these do we need to do? Like, okay, we come up with a couple of ideas, but how do we know when is enough?
Well, honestly, the more ideas, the better. But at least 8. I would say at least 8.
And do all the ideas need to be like written words, or can we draw? Or
that's a great question. Drawing is also great. If you have an idea that can be expressed better through a drawing, then go ahead, draw it. Nina, for instance, she draws greatly, and every time we do brainstormings, she will like draw out the idea that she came up with, and that's really...
She's better at this than me.
No, we always compete in this, and she's definitely better. Anyway, once the ideation phase finishes, we start prototyping. But for this, we have to pick one idea, one solution. So what of all the ideas that we discussed did you like the most, Nina?
That's tough. I think I like the last one you mentioned around having this sign-up service that helps students sign up. So a service that would handle the whole sign-up process on behalf of students. I think that would be pretty cool, right?
I really like that one too. Let's prototype that one.
Yeah. So when we're prototyping, it's actually pretty important to pick what we want to prototype, because we can't prototype all the things, right? There's way too many ideas at this point. So you have to pick. You can actually vote with whoever you're working with together. You can pick and vote, and the best ideas, you can start prototyping them. So prototyping is supposed to be very fast, very cheap. You can use literally pen and paper, and you can just walk out into the real world and talk to real users. Yeah, so at this point, you shouldn't spend any time, resources. You shouldn't engineer or build complex, apps or whatever. You should just try the very minimum, kind of investment to test out an idea, to test out a hypothesis.
So for instance, if we were to prototype a service that provided a way of signing up for classes, I was thinking of hiring 5 engineers and 2 designers and building an app.
Oh, that's way too much. Because, we don't want to spend too much time. We want to know if this idea is viable or not. And trust me, very often, the ideas will prove to be not so straightforward as you might think. So if you manage to test it in a few days, in less than a week, even in one day, you can just walk out, spend 2-3 hours, talk to users. If you manage to get insights in that amount of time, that would be amazing. And you can start iterating on that idea very fast, as opposed to if you spend weeks building it out to only find out that it was the wrong idea in the first place, right? So yeah, it's supposed to be very fast.
So for instance, would this work?
Oh, that's absolutely perfect. So you don't need any drawing skills. You don't need anything to get started, really just pen and paper. So what this is actually a poster that advertises our service for students, so that we can advertise, hey, are you tired of signing up for classes? We can help. We can do that instead of you. So if we put this poster up all around campus and we leave our contact number here.
This is actually my number.
Now you have her number.
Why? Because I want to hear users. So anyone that calls will just be redirected to me.
Yeah. So the goal here is you just want to be on the other side, right? And receive all the calls and literally hear people out, hear users out, and what their questions are, what their frustrations are, and they will tell you a lot. Yeah.
So this is great. Now that we have our prototype, we can go to the last phase, which is testing. So how do we test? Testing is all about learning. learning what part of our prototypes works and what part doesn't. So for instance, if we were to test this prototype, I would put it all around the campus and I would look for people that saw the poster and called, and for people that saw the poster and did not call. And for those people who are like Karen and have a very stressful moment when they're like signing up for a class, are not calling, these are the users that I care about the most because I want to understand what doesn't work. Why aren't they engage with my prototype? So let's do a little bit of role play, shall we?
Let's do it.
Can you pretend you're Karen?
All right. So I'm Karen. I'm the student.
Great. And I'm going to be the interviewer. So Karen, how are you?
I'm great. Thanks.
Tell me a little bit about your sign-up process to classes when you're at school. How is this process like?
Yeah, sure. I mean, it's pretty stressful. I hate it every time. There's so much waiting, and sometimes the servers will crash, and I just have to like go back and forth and like do these menial tasks. Like, I don't know. It's dreadful, to be honest.
So right now, I know that this is the type of user I'm looking for. This user is suffering the same problem I'm trying to solve. I'm trying to solve for stress, and this user is stressed when signing up for classes. Okay, Karen, have you seen this poster around the campus?
Yeah, I saw it posted around campus. Yeah, I saw a few of those.
Okay, but you didn't call, right?
No.
So why didn't you call?
Well, I mean, who calls these days? Like, I don't know. It's too much of a fuss. I don't want to like pick up a phone and like call a random number. I don't know what to expect. I don't know, it just feels weird.
Okay, this is great information. What I'm learning here is that Karen doesn't have a problem with the service, or at least I don't know if she has a problem with the service, but she has a problem with calling. Calling is not something she's used to. So if I were to iterate on my prototype, I would change the phone number for an email address and try to see if there are more users calling. This way, I'll iterate and learn until my solution gets as good as it can be. Okay, that's the design thinking process. 5 steps, very easy. Now we want you to it's your turn now. With all of these phases, what you can do is come back to the challenge we introduced at the very beginning and try to reimagine your college experience. How would you make it better? How would you make your experience at school better? Go through all the steps of design thinking, empathize with users, try to find like college students like you, then define your problem you're trying to solve, then ideate, come up with as many solutions as you can, prototype what the solution that you like the most, and test it with users. Mm-hmm. We want to see that from you. Once you're done, you can submit a pitch, and there's a link in the chat that you can see it in the chat, and you can see it in the description of the video. And the three pitches that get the higher score will win Google Swag. Yay! Just like this. So there's some judging criteria. Nina, what are the judging criteria?
So we have 4 judging criteria. So we have user focus. Who are your users? Is your problem based on a real user need? And this is super important. Yeah. So understanding your users is key. Then we have creativity. What are all the ideas that you came up with during your ideation session? And then we have validation, which is what methodology, what techniques you used to test your prototype and how you executed your prototype as well. So this is not about like how well you draw, but it's more around what were your ideas around how to test these, how to test your hypothesis, right? And then the last one is presentation, which is we really want to understand your process. We really want to understand how you approach this challenge step by step. And this is what we'll be judging you on. Yeah.
And that's super important because if you ever want to interview for Google and become a designer here in Google, this is what we will be looking for. We will be looking to try to understand what is your design process more than your design solutions. Great. Thank you so much for listening to us rumble. Now we're gonna start answering some live questions, and I'm first gonna start with one question we get asked very, very often, which is, what's your biggest piece of advice to be successful as a UX designer? I've been asked this a lot throughout my career, and I think that the key part of being a good UX designer is being good with users, is really understanding users, understanding what they want, understanding what are their problems. If we can really understand users, then our design solutions will be great. That's why our role is called UX, user experience. I mean, it's part of our title, so
Yeah.
that's super important.
And by the way, not sure if you knew, but we have these 10 principles at Google, and the very first one goes like this: focus on the user, and all else will follow. Which is, I mean, there is a reason why it's our first principle. It's super important, and not just for UX designers, for anyone really.
That's right.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm going to ask you a question, Nina.
Go ahead.
What do you think is unique about being a UX designer at Google?
Well, I think probably one of the most unique things is just like how many people you get to collaborate with. You work with not just a lot of other UX designers doing sprints, ideating, whiteboarding, but you also work with the product managers, the engineers, marketing team members. Like, you work with literally everyone in the team. And that's the beauty of it. There's so much collaboration. There's so many ideas flying around, and your job is to literally take those and create a thing out of it. That's absolutely magical.
That's great. What other questions do we have?
Yeah, let's see. I mean, actually, there's this one thing that that we also get asked pretty often. I can ask you. So, what is your favorite project that you've ever worked on?
Oh, my favorite project. That's super interesting.
Yeah. It's a tough one.
It's a tough one because I honestly love every project I work on. I think that as designers, we get smarter and smarter the more we change a project, and the more we can become experts in different industries, right? But I really enjoy one project that we're working on right now, and I'm working together with Nina on this, which is rewards. How do we reward users that are doing things right? How do we reward users, for instance, that are contributing a lot, that are creating a lot of content, that are submitting feedback? And that's super interesting because it's really about understanding user behavior and understanding what do users value and how do they want to be rewarded. I'm going to ask you, Nina, another question. How many designers do you work with? And how many engineers do you work with? And do you work with any other, you just told me that you work with other cross-functional team members, but who else do you work with in a day-to-day base?
Yeah, I mean, actually, I work with, especially in those first stages when we start thinking about, what it is, the problem we want to solve, when you try to understand the problem, the users, right? At that point, there's just so many people involved. There's a lot of designers. And yeah, as you mentioned, there's collaboration with engineers, mostly at those later stages, but we also very often include engineers in our sprints, in our design thinking process, because it's important. Everyone brings their own perspective. And when you put all of these people together, you create amazing things. I mean, there's just so many ideas. And so I mentioned product managers, and all of these collaborations happen at different phases of the whole process, but also they happen at the same time. So yeah, it's collaboration with literally everyone around you, which is amazing.
It's great. We're gonna try to see if there's any live question right now. Let us see if we've.
Okay, let's see if there's anything live coming in.
I think. Okay, so we're getting some live questions over here. Yeah. So first question, Nina, are you ready?
I think so.
Any real life example that design thinking process is used in solving problems? Oh my God, this one's great.
Yeah, it's a good one. I mean, there's just a lot of examples. Like literally everything we do has design thinking in it, and I could literally cite any project that we've worked on here at Google.
But I think this person is talking about real life examples, like maybe not
real life,
like in your day-to-day life, for instance.
Interesting. Want to take a stab at it?
I have an example. It's a bit crazy, but I moved to an apartment, and the following week I moved in, they started building a construction in front. So it was super noisy, and the construction was happening like every day, even Saturdays and Sundays. So I couldn't sleep at all. And really, I started asking everyone I knew, hey, have you ever experienced this? I started asking people in my building what they think, and I got a lot of ideas of things I could do. I also started to understand a little bit more why were people like upset. It's not upsetting that there was a lot of noise. It was upsetting that the noise would not stop. So I started thinking a lot about like what could I do. I brainstormed a lot of things. I could maybe file a complaint in like the contamination authority because this was like noise contamination. I could call the architect of the construction. I could move. And after a lot of brainstorming, I decided I had to contact the architect and the person in charge of the construction. So I basically created a little bit of a prototype of what was happening with a letter with like all my neighbors saying like what exactly how exactly they felt about this noise. And I took it over, and the architect was like, no, I'm not too sure. This is not enough. We really need to continue the construction. But then I decided I would do something else because that wasn't enough. So with all the neighbors, we decided to say that the noise was so loud we weren't able to work because we weren't able to to concentrate, and that was enough to make the construction stop on Saturdays and Sundays. So it's not exactly design thinking, but we did do a lot of ideation about like how we could do it, and we did iterate it on the solution. So
did you use Post-its?
Of course I use Post-its for everything. This is my life now. So
that's her life. Yeah.
Okay, so we're gonna have another question right now. The next question is, okay, we're getting...
See, it's coming in. It's boiling. Preparing.
Okay. Okay, this one is for you. When we come up with a potential solution idea, does it have to be scoped down to something like that can be produced within our means, like budget, time?
That's a really good question. I mean, ultimately, you want to be able to turn this idea into reality. So taking those things into account is important, but perhaps not at the stage when you're thinking wide and ideating. When you're thinking about ideas, it's important to let go of all the constraints, because you never know what way you can find to solve a problem. Sometimes you might find a very simple, cheap, easy way to solve a problem that might have seemed like it would be such a huge investment. So yeah, I mean, while you're thinking of all the possible ideas, just forget about your constraints.
So sometimes in design thinking, when we're ideating, we come up with some exercises to help the ideas be even crazier. So for instance, one exercise I really love is how would he do it? It's called like this, or how would she do it? It's actually how would it do it? Because what we do is we list companies from all around the world, very, very different, such as McDonald's, the government of Singapore, Adidas, Nike, Airbnb, Uber, and we try to solve the problem as if we were that company. So for instance, if we were to make Karen's life less stressful, how would we do it if we were Uber? So maybe if we were Uber, we would have cars that go from Karen's place to the university and allow her to sign more easily. Or we would be able to hire someone to sign up for Karen with and people can offer their services in a platform that's crowdsourced. If we were McDonald's, we would that's sort of the thing. We think as if we were another company, so that we can come up with ideas that are even crazier.
Mhm.
Ideating is not about feasibility. Ideating is about going outside the comfort zone. Honestly, one of the things that I struggle with the most when we're running ideation sessions is that many times people that are very used to working with constraints will very quickly think of feasibility. Oh no, this is too expensive.
Yeah.
This cannot be built.
Oh, we can't do this, you
We
know.
can do this.
You don't want that when you're ideating.
No.
Just tell those people, keep that for later.
Keep
Yeah.
that exactly. That's after design thinking.
Yeah.
We also say something very true, which is never say, but always say and. So if I hear something that's too crazy or that I don't agree, I cannot say no to that. I have to say yes and build on top. That way we make sure that we are not limiting ourselves. Cool. I have another question. What kind of prototypes have you built?
Oh, wow. That's an amazing one. Actually, we've built so many different types. We've literally had people imagine they're using an app, but it's actually just random like pieces of paper that barely look like anything. So it's pretty hard to imagine, but we successfully got insights from it, which is all that matters. We've actually had sometimes we would be using our phones with, we would load images into it. So it doesn't really work like an app, it's literally just scrolling through images, but it helps people imagine how they would use it. So when they see it from the phone, it really helps them kind of get the idea of, okay, if this was an app, what would I do? Any other crazy things we've done?
I can think of one. And this one we did together some time ago. I don't know if you remember. Once we've used a chat app to make pretend that we were a chatbot. So we were trying to test if one of our solutions would work with merchants. So our solution was a chatbot that would create offers for them instantly, and automatically.
Mhm.
However, building a chatbot for that would have been so expensive.
Mhm.
So many engineers would have been needed. So what we did is we made pretend we were the chatbots, and we created a script. So we were chatting with the merchant on like a chat app, and the merchant would like ask us things, and we would reply as if we were machines. This was super fun. I don't know if you remember.
Extremely, yes.
Yeah, we
It was amazing.
we were laughing so much when we were doing it, and we learned so much. It was amazing. So really, prototypes, there's no limit to how you can test the idea.
Mhm.
The only important thing about prototypes is that you learn about your users, and you learn about how to make your solutions even better.
Yeah.
Cool. I have another question. Are there any tips for prepping for an interview at Google?
Ooh, that's interesting. Well, I think this whole event is like one big tip. If you pay attention, I think you would really have, it would be closer to how we work. And the important thing is to understand the foundation, the principles. You don't have to know every step by heart. But as long as you understand what's important and what you want to get out of each of these steps and how to arrive at a solution, how to ideate and kind of build ideas and understand users, I think that would be the best tip I can give. Yeah,
Definitely. Both Nina and I are interviewers, and many times when we interview candidates, what we want to know and we want to hear from them is how do they approach design? What is their step-by-step process? Many times people come with like pristine portfolios with like great, great design, but for us it's hard to understand what part was made by the candidate and what part was made by other people. So what we do is really try to understand how did they come up with those solutions?
Mhm.
What were they thinking? What challenges did they arrive? As designers, all of us have challenges and face challenges.
Mhm.
Like design is not perfect, so we want to hear that. We want to understand how you can deal with these challenges, how you can come up with more innovative solutions, how you can test and how you can learn. And most importantly, if you're an active listener, if you can take in information that you receive and process it and make your solution better with that information. Again, it's all about learning, right? It's like the same thing as design thinking.
That's a really good point, and it reminds me, don't worry about a lot of these phases looking unpolished. Like very often, candidates want to present, as you mentioned, like a very polished version of their projects. But it's important to also show behind the scenes, like all the little sketches you did on a napkin, or all the little like weird illustrations that nobody but you can understand. That's fine. You can show all of that because eventually all of that builds up to the solution that you're showing, right? And it's super important to give that context.
Okay, another question.
Mm-hmm.
Mm,
What do we have?
Okay. Have you seen UX designers, a UX designer that's also an engineer? If yes, what does their day work, the day at work look like?
Actually, it's interesting. I don't know if you knew, but we have a role that's called a UX engineer, and this role is really kind of in the middle of it. And if you have an interest in both engineering and in UX, then perhaps it's something that you might be into. So what a UX engineer does, they essentially help to build prototypes to test ideas in a way where things work. So it's not like a paper level prototype. It's still about testing out a little bit more complicated and more detailed ideas. So it still requires a bit of engineering experience, but it's not like full-fledged building it from scratch, right? And very often, UX engineers need to have strong sensibilities when it comes to experience design, right? And they have to understand a little bit of how flows work and how to understand the user. So you really need to have the skills of both sides. Yeah, I think that would be a good example of a role that would fit into that.
Definitely, definitely. And it has the best of both worlds. Really.
Yeah.
You get to empathize with users, you get to you be very creative, and you also
Yeah.
get to build things from scratch.
Yeah.
So
But I mean, even if you're in a role of a UX designer, if you know how to code, I mean, that's great, yeah. And in Google, the great part is that it really you shape your own role. So if you have specific interests or skills, then you can use them at your job, and there's no hard rules here. So if you prefer to write code and be a UX designer at the same time, then great, of course you can do it.
okay, I have another one. Should the steps in the design process include a step to analyze stakeholders? Okay, so should we analyze stakeholders when we're going through the design thinking process? Let me take this. Yes, definitely. It's important to understand like all the stakeholders of in the context of the problem we're trying to solve. Design thinking we can have like so many more exercises for design thinking in each of the stages. And in the empathize stage, one activity that we do a lot is try to understand what are all the touch points of the user and what are all the stakeholders our user interacts with. This is super important. Of course, depending on the size of the challenge we're trying to solve, we can do something more in depth or do something more light. And so if you're doing something lighter, you might not go in depth into every stakeholder, into stakeholder mapping, which is how we call it. But if we're trying to solve a really big challenge, this is very important. For instance, in the challenge that we did with Karen, we would try to understand who is important in Karen's life, who is important when it comes to signing up for new classes. Is it other students signing up? Is it the college authority who releases the sign-up form? It's important to understand these connections because it will help us better ideate solutions. Do you have anything to add to that?
No, I think that makes perfect sense. Yeah.
Okay, so let me go through one last question. What would be your advice for someone starting as a UX designer? How did you start as a UX designer, Nina?
How did I start? Well, the interesting thing is you very rarely come across someone who had a very clean start, like, oh, I want to be a UX designer. Well, let me start being a UX designer. like very often it starts from either related fields or some interests, or some people start, studying either visual design, or they get into research and then they get deeper and deeper into understanding users. So they start, thinking more around, okay, how do I turn these insights into, something practical, into a product. So I think people come from very different sides, and that's okay. That's completely normal. Every UX designer in Google probably has a different story about how they got started. But yeah,
We could just think about the people in our team.
Yeah.
Some people study design, other
Yeah.
people study business. We have people that study psychology. We have people that were like UX, engineers.
or people that started nothing like me.
Yeah, honestly, if you're someone that has empathized with users and can follow a process that enables creative solutions, then you do a great job at being a UX designer.
But I mean, a very concrete way to get started would be just to start analyzing the world around you, identifying problems, things you're passionate about. If you start from something that's very close to you, close to your heart, then you would probably be the user of that problem, of that product too. And that really helps you to get started, thinking about ideas, evaluating ideas, and later on, as you kind of, go deeper and deeper, more into details, you can learn how to navigate this process a bit better. And that's fine. You can try and fail, and that's normal. And we do that here at Google too as well, and that's part of our process.
Definitely. One advice I would give is to be very curious, to explore design, to explore, to see as much as you can, to see what products are doing, to see what startups are doing, to see what big companies are doing, to go on like Instagram, Behance, Dribbble, all the places where you can find examples of great creative solutions, and just try to understand why do they work or why they don't work. If you're curious, you'll start creating a language that you can reuse as a UX designer on your own. I think that really worked for many of the designers I work with. So yeah, this is a little tip for you.
Absolutely. That's a great one. Well, thank you so much for just, asking all the amazing questions and kind of sitting through all of this. And just wanted to remind you that you can check the links in the description where you can submit your pitch. Don't forget there's Google Swag. And yeah, you'll be judged on those 4 criteria we mentioned. And be sure to subscribe to the Google Students YouTube channel. And yeah, look out for more amazing videos.
Great. And also, if you want to hear more about Google and what Google is doing, you can subscribe to the Connect newsletter. Also, we're always looking for designers. So if you're interested in applying to Google, go to jobs at Google. You can search it in Google and
Nice.
and apply. Thank you so much for your time, and have a great rest of the day.
Yeah.
Bye-bye.
Bye.